Violet at All Faiths, the house that did not gather me. At 33, the world was no longer just a map of roads and cities, but a living tapestry of spiritual directives. I sat in the quiet of my home, feeling the weight of a calling that felt older than the earth itself. The Holy Spirit spoke not in a roar, but in the gentle persistence of a bloom. I held a handful of violet wildflowers, their petals a deep, humble purple. But it was their roots that mattered most, naked, tangled, and heavy with the soil they had just left behind. To offer a flower with its roots is to offer the whole truth, a raw vulnerability that asks for a permanent home. I drove to Hastings, Nebraska, toward a place that promised a sanctuary for every soul, the All Faiths Chapel. It was a house defined by the word gathering, a place where difference was meant to be held without hostility. I carried my offering toward its doors, believing that a place named for all faiths would surely understand the language of physis, the organic, untamed truth of nature. I wasn't bringing a trophy or a gift in a polished pot. I was bringing my heart, as exposed and undefended as the roots in my palms. I reached the threshold and knelt. I didn't want to give this to a person. I wanted to give it to the house. In my heart, no single individual owned this space, for no single person could embody the plurality of all faiths. I placed the violets down, their roots touching the cold stone of the entrance. It was a prophetic action, a bridge between the divine timing of the Spirit and the physical laws of men. I felt a profound sense of peace, a messenger who had finally delivered his witness of humility and remembrance. But the peace was shattered by the arrival of the state. An officer named Silas approached, his uniform a wall of blue and silver that represented nomos, the rigid, man-made laws of bureaucracy. He did not see a spiritual offering. He saw a trespass. He did not see a messenger of peace. He saw a violation of a physical boundary drawn in the dirt. As the cold steel of handcuffs closed around my wrists, the irony tasted like ash. The house of inclusion had become the location of my exclusion. The arrest was only the first gate. I was moved from the cell to the sterile, white-tiled corridors of a psychiatric hospital. Here, my spiritual vulnerability was relabeled as a clinical symptom. The system, unable to process a man who followed the voice of the Spirit, chose to medicalize my devotion. I walked the long, fluorescent-lit halls, feeling like the ancient Pharmakos, the scapegoat cast out to cleanse a community that feared what it could not control. They released me after a time, but the state was not finished. 60 days later, the law reached out again to reclaim me. Silas returned, representing the delayed weight of the prosecution. I was led into a jail cell, the heavy iron bars a final, physical manifestation of nomos. I had brought life and raw roots to a place that chose walls and confinement. I served the time, carrying the silence of the violets within me, while the world outside continued to police its borders. In the quiet of the cell, I reflected on the broken law of theoxenia, the ancient belief that gods disguise themselves as strangers to test humanity's hospitality. The house had failed the test. It had chosen physical lines over cosmic ones. I looked out through a sliver of a window at the patches of earth below, wondering where those violets had gone. Had they withered on the stone, or had someone, in a moment of secret grace, planted them in the soil where they belonged? Throughout history, the messenger is often treated as the trespasser. I saw my reflection in the eyes of the mystics and sages who came before me, those who stood at the clash of nature and law. My arrest didn't diminish the purity of the violet. It only proved how much the world still struggles to receive uncontained truth. I was an uprooted truth, a man seeking a home or soil for a message of unity, only to find the gates barred and the records divided. When I finally walked free, I found that the institutions that demanded accountability from me were themselves unaccountable. The records were fragmented, divided among police files, hospital notes, and sealed court documents. They had taken my liberty, yet they failed to preserve a unified account of their own actions. I began to gather these fragments myself, the testimonies, the laws, the memories, stitching together the architecture of what had happened. I am a messenger who attempted to leave a gentle witness at the house. Though the house did not gather me, I have gathered the story. I hold this book now, a collection of traditions, sciences, and faiths brought into one documented architecture. The violet, humility, faithfulness, and watchfulness still blooms in the ink of these pages. I have rerouted my energy in the truth, finding the soil in the telling of the tale, forever a witness to the moment the spirit met the state.